Hey everybody, I'm Ed Keller. I'm the Executive Director of MRII, the Market Research Institute International, and it's a real pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar. We're thrilled to have over 750 people who registered for this webinar from 69 countries around the world. Clearly, this is evidence that we have a fascinating and important topic for today that affects all of us in the market research industry, namely respondent fraud and what we can do to combat it. I'll introduce our two speakers in a moment, but first let me cover a few housekeeping details, and then I'd like to briefly introduce you to MRII. Our webinar speakers will be talking for about 35 minutes, which will leave plenty of time for your questions to be answered. So please feel free to ask your questions via the Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom page, and we'll get to as many of them as we can after the speakers have completed their presentation. We are recording today's session and it'll be available on demand for future viewing. And furthermore, in about a week or so, you'll be hearing from Pam Bracken of the University of Georgia on how you can access the recording for everyone who's registered. So with that, if we go to the next slide, let me give a brief background about MRII for those of you who are not familiar with us. We are a not-for-profit educational institute with a singular mission, and that is to provide education and skills development about best practices in market research, insights, and analytics. We have a variety of ways we do this to meet the needs of both practitioners as well as users of research, from those who are relatively new to the industry through to those who are experienced and want to brush up and learn more. So if we go to the next slide, I'll just say a few words about these courses. They're online courses that teach the core skills needed to design and conduct meaningful market research. Over 10,000 people from well over 100 countries have completed our courses. We offer these in partnership with the University of Georgia, who's also our co-host for today's webinar. One of the ways that you can take advantage of these courses is by enrolling in the Principles of Market Research. This online course is completed through self-paced study. It covers 13 topics of the market research core body of knowledge, everything from how to design quantitative research, how to do qualitative research, introduction to global research, advanced analytics, and so on. The course is endorsed by all the major market research and insights industry associations, and successful completion offers a certificate of program completion, and it qualifies you for Global Professional Association's national certification designations. You can learn more about the Principles of Market Research by scanning the QR code or by visiting marketresearchcourses.org. On the next slide, for those of you who are looking for a more targeted learning experience that focuses on just one or a few areas, we also offer Principles Express. Here you can pick and choose, say, our course on qualitative or questionnaire design or global market research or sampling if you want training in one or two areas. Again, you can learn more by clicking on the QR code or by visiting marketresearchcourses.org. Next page, please. Lastly, we offer two course bundles around a particular topic. One we call Analytics 1, 2, 3, which bundles together our offerings in analytics at a discounted rate. And the other is the Foundations of Quantitative Research, which bundles together courses on questionnaire design, data collection, and sampling. And again, you can learn more by scanning the QR code or visiting marketresearchcourses.org. Next slide. In addition to online courses that offer deep knowledge, MRII also is proud to offer learning opportunities through a YouTube channel that we launched last year and which offers short-form learning videos on a range of topics from AI to advanced analytics to B2B market research, how to have success with the C-suite, and more. New videos are uploaded regularly on Tuesdays, so we hope you'll check it out and subscribe. We're proud to say we have nearly 40,000 subscribers to this channel, and well over 100 videos have been uploaded with more that come each week. And we also have a new podcast series that we launched last year called Insights and Innovators, where you can listen to industry leaders talk about key topics of interest to anyone in our industry who wishes to get smarter and advance their careers. Recent podcast guests have included people such as Ben Page, the global CEO of Ipsos, Pam Forbes, the global head of insights and analytics at Mondelez, to name just a few. New podcasts are released regularly on Thursdays, and I hope you'll check it out and subscribe. The link at the bottom is at the bottom of the slide, tells you how you can find this on the MRII website, or it's available on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and other leading platforms where you listen to podcasts. Next slide, please. Lastly, we'd like to thank our sponsors, including on the left-hand side of the slide, our founding organizations, and on the right-hand part of the slide are all the corporate sponsors of our curriculum and all the learning opportunities that MRII provides. As a not-for-profit organization, we rely on these sponsors to help us achieve our mission of training and educating the market research profession, and we're extremely appreciative of their support of our mission. So with that, let's go to the next slide and we'll get to the heart of today's presentation. Today, we're going to talk about fraud and what you can do about it. And we're pleased to have two expert speakers from dtect. Riley Croft is VP of Partnership. He brings a decade of experience building SaaS partnerships with deep expertise in the research technology ecosystem. His work spans strategic alliances, platform integrations, and growth-focused collaboration. Andrea Huang is Senior Product Manager at dtect. She's worked in research since 2011 with a focus on developing innovative digital solutions across both qualitative and quantitative. Today, she focuses on building dtect's technology-first platform that prevents survey fraud. So thanks to both of you for being here today, and we're excited to learn from you. So over to you, Riley and Andrea.
All right. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to our first official webinar, How Fraudsters Use AI to Exploit Your Surveys and What You Can Do About It. So to start, we want to emphasize that fraud committed by individuals is certainly not new in market research. We've always had people who try to game the system for incentives or out of curiosity or for any other reason. But what's different and what we're here to unpack today is how artificial intelligence, or AI, and emerging technologies have taken that individual fraud and made it scalable and efficient and almost frictionless. So what's changed? Before AI, someone looking to cheat a survey had to really put in some work. You had to think through your screener answers very carefully. You had to write open-ended responses that sounded reasonable and relevant to the topic. And you had to be careful about speed checks and logic traps that might catch you. But that effort, that cognitive load, frankly kept fraud limited in volume. There's just a natural ceiling to how much one person could accomplish. But now, AI has completely removed that friction. Screeners can be navigated by trial and error in seconds, and with ChatGPT or Claude generating responses that sound exactly right. Open-ended questions can be filled with clean, on-topic, human-like text that often reads better than actual human responses. And browser spoofing tools and temporary SMS services are so user-friendly now that really no technical skill is even required. So fraud has kind of moved from being very effortful and limited to being really as simple as following a YouTube tutorial. But here's what's really important to understand. We're not just dealing with better fraud, we're dealing with a completely different threat model that breaks our fundamental assumptions about how fraud detection works.
And moving here to the next slide, I kind of want to walk us through exactly what this type of workflow looks like today, because we know that understanding this process is critical to defending against it, right? So we have 4 steps here: persona generation, AI generated responses, evasion techniques, and rinse and repeat, or exit and repeat. So let's take a look at the first one. So step 1 is creating that persona, like creating that fake profile that really feels real. So they start using tools like ChatGPT or Claude to create comprehensive fake profiles. So the prompt that they're typing in might say something like, create a detailed persona for a 37-year-old Hispanic mother living in Westchester, New York, who works as a product manager, drives an electric vehicle, and enjoys board games with her family. It's kind of like sounds like me actually. And what comes back is not just basic demographics, right? Like they actually get, especially now with the newer models, they get a rich, consistent character with career history, family dynamics, purchase preferences, and lifestyle details that can help them answer a lot of screening questions really consistently. And I want to show you an example here of how bad actors share this information. And these are actual screenshots. We didn't create these. These actually was what we saw that is being shared out there as to how they create fake personas, or really how they share their knowledge online. And in some cases, they use this information to register to some survey taking sites. So as you can see an example on the right, they have a Word document on the right while they're registering their information on the left, and they're following like that persona that they created and they're going to be using throughout. The next step is the AI generated openings. So once they're inside the survey, they can copy the survey question and paste it into ChatGPT or another AI model. And for an open-ended question about, let's say, car purchasing decisions, they might prompt within ChatGPT, like using the persona of the mother in Westchester with an electric vehicle, the one that I just talked about. They would say, what factors do you consider in your purchase decision? Like answer that question. And what it can return is something like, honestly, the decision came down to safety features and monthly payments. And with a toddler, I couldn't compromise on safety, but also as a single mother, I also had to make sure safety features did not come at too high of a cost. So as you read through these, you notice the kind of like the authentic complexity here, right? Like it's competing priorities, emotional reasoning. And as you read this passes traditional checks, or like the quality checks that we have. And then the last two steps, evasion techniques and exit or rinse and repeat. So before submitting, they might make some edits to include typos or any other human-like behavior. So as someone is reading, they'll know, okay, well, typos, things like that is normal human behavior. So you don't really flag it right away as you're reading it. And then exit and repeat, right? So now with a new proxy, a new browser or device fingerprint, and a slightly adjusted persona or a new persona altogether, they repeat the process, and they can do this dozens and dozens of times, right? All while maintaining that quality that's hard to tell apart from real human responses when you read this. And now I know sometimes we kind of question the scale of which AI can be used for fraud, but let me share you some examples here as to how, like, the actual impact we're seeing through the use of AI. And in this example, and the first one here is the Hong Kong deepfake heist. So what happened was we saw what happened really when an AI generated deepfake were used in corporate fraud. In Hong Kong, in this example, a finance worker within the company transferred 25.6 million after participating in a video call where AI deepfakes were impersonating the company's CFO and other colleagues. So in this example, this wasn't really a case of poor technology or an obvious fake. The employee, he himself said that everybody on the call sounded and looked exactly like the people he knew and he worked with. And this just happened last year. Another example is AI voice deepfakes targeting seniors in Long Island. And so for those who don't live in the US, Long Island is an island in the southeastern part of New York State. So they made the news here again as fraudsters are now using AI for voice cloning technology to scam the elderly. So in this example, they were extracting their grandchild's voice from all the media that they see in social media, like TikTok in this particular example, to call their elderly relatives and impersonate them in fabricated emergencies, like, hey, I'm locked up, I need money for on, etc. And there were over 3,000 incidents reported since 2023, and I think it's still growing. But it's been resulting in more than 126 million lost in those counties.
So why this matters? Fraudsters or frankly, ordinary people gaming the system have really always been a part of our landscape. But what's different now is the volume that one person can generate and the speed at which they can do it, as well as the quality of the fake data that they can produce. This isn't about a few bad apples filling out one survey here or there. This is about people generating dozens of completes in an hour, all looking clean. And we're seeing this across different types of research, but not limited to these. So like brand trackers, concept tests, qual communities, diary studies. And so qualitative fraud is now at scale. This problem has become even more complex when we look at qualitative research, because we've always had some level of fraud in qual, people, fabricating their diary entries or exaggerating their feedback or stretching their qualifications to fit study criteria. But how this type of fraud has been changing. So AI generated diary sequences with now contain emotional nuance. So fraudsters can prompt AI tools, something like write a 7-day skincare diary entry series as a 37-year-old woman testing an anti-aging serum. Includes some emotional reactions and specific results. And the output includes incredibly believable details. So like day 3, noticed a slight tingling around my eyes this morning. Not unpleasant, actually kind of refreshing. Day 5, my skin definitely feels firmer around the jawline. Even my husband commented that I looked rested, which is funny because work has been absolutely crazy. So instead of generic responses, AI can insert very specific and realistic touches, like my toddler accidentally got into my lotion, so I've been extra cautious since. And this kind of detail used to be a marker of authenticity, but now it can be just generated in seconds. In online research communities, we're seeing AI-generated posts that sound perfectly natural, like, has anyone else struggled to stay motivated with their fitness routine while working night shifts? I'm 3 weeks into this program and finding it really hard to meal prep when I get home at 7 a.m. These contributions blend seamlessly into community discussions and influence sentiment and can completely skew the insights that we're drawing from these platforms. These AI-generated qualitative contributions blend in, they pass moderator reviews and subtly erode the integrity of your data and your insights.
So let's walk through how these bad actors bypass even the most common checks we see and we're used to using. The first one is IP and geo checks or location checks. So many of us still rely on blocking duplicate IPs or mismatched locations, but today's fraudsters use either bought or rented residential or mobile proxy networks, giving them access to tens of thousands of rotating, legitimate looking IPs by simply, as I mentioned, buying or renting this. As you can see on the screenshot on the right, they have a lot of different configurations to choose from, right? From location, connection type. I'm not sure if you can see from the screenshot, but they can choose, is it like a mobile IP or a residential IP? They can also choose the internet service provider and more at a very, very low cost. The next one is device checks or device fingerprints. So anti-detect browsers rather, like Bit browser, like I have here in the screenshots, others like multi-login, AdSpower, allows fraudsters to spin up multiple browser environments or sessions, each with a unique screen configuration and fingerprints. So from your side, as you're looking at the people coming in, it looks like a different device each time or like a unique person each time. And just to show you an example here of multiple and web sessions within the same browser tool that is starting up. In this example, on the mobile one is already up and ready to go, while the other one on the right is starting up. So all of these will have a unique IP address. The other one is SMS or text verification. And with this one, it's like one of the most surprising things is that even US phone number authentication is not a blocker anymore. I know a lot of us rely on that text verification as that second layer of authentication. But as you can see here, that is also easily broken into. So there are virtual text banks or like SMS banks that sell real US phone numbers in bulk or just like a one-off. And fraudsters or bad actors get the verification code in the dashboard. So they sign up, they buy a US phone number, they get a code through the dashboard. They verify once, either verify an account registration or to redeem an incentive, and then move on. And the other one is speed traps and time-based logic. So they know better than to complete your 15-minute survey in 3 minutes, right? Because that triggers an alert or a flag. Instead, they use auto-delay scripts that let their submissions blend into your average length of interview range. And really, historically, we've judged quality by a couple of things, right? Like relevance, coherence, spelling, grammar, consistency, but not just with AI excelling at those, but also with the ease of use of the tools that we just saw it's really making it really easy for them. And we need to pivot and think of a couple of things. So we need to focus on behavioral authenticity, right? Like, are we seeing patterns that are indicative of external help, such as moving away from the survey page or the screener page, coming back, copying and pasting, highlighting? Are we detecting those types of behavior? Also, look at the cross response patterns, right? Do the answers match human inconsistency or consistency? And validate origins, not just the output. Like, where are these people coming from? What are the devices that they're using? And all of that, not just what they're entering in your survey. And with all that, really to say is that if our definition of quality doesn't evolve, then we'll keep passing fraud as good data. And because the cost of preventing fraud upfront is much less than dealing with bad data, as it leads to rework, lost trust, and just generally like poor decisions made, poor business decisions made. And we're already seeing the next wave of fraud, right? Like AI agents. So just a few months ago, the concept of AI agent was something that we didn't have access to, but we couldn't get access to this easily. But now, just by having a ChatGPT subscription, it gives you access to create your own agent. I'm not sure if any of you here are subscribed to ChatGPT. You'll see that you actually have the option now on the drop down to select an AI agent. And I just want to take a closer look here as to how AI agents is really different from fraud operations with like survey farms that we've been fighting for years. And what AI agents and automation can actually do today and will continue to get better is really spinning up identities at scale. They automate the creation of personas, complete with demographic details that we saw. They can create email accounts and register profiles on behalf of someone, though, so they can combine the scripts with AI to auto-generate and manage this like multiple addresses, user accounts, and just like the general like basic profile fields. And they can also, and they're actually, this one is pretty good at that. I tested this myself the other day. They can navigate user interfaces with assistant, just like very minor assistants. They're really good at doing that. And, through that browser automation or like the AI generated text to fill the forms or surveys, they answer questions and can move through simple survey logic. And they can also adapt their responses with the proper prompts. They can feed screener. They can feed screener open-ended into the models, like again, like ChatGPT, and they can get that customized answers that match the persona in the context that they've been using since the beginning. So we will see a rise in agent survey farms completing research tasks at scale compared to now, and fake participant personas with earned credibility within like a sample or a panel provider, and just overall long-term deception, not just one-off completes.
So let's compare. Traditional survey farms are very hardware heavy, dozens of phones and SIM cards and devices in a room that are manually or even semi-automatically operated. Traditional survey farms are also fairly labor intensive, and in this case, they're often run by very low cost labor and executing on these tasks across multiple panels. There's a lot of rule-based automation at play. So like simple scripts to click through surveys with hard-coded logic and rotating tools like VPNs and spoof browsers, etc. And this all leads to fairly predictable patterns. So they eventually repeat these behaviors like straightlining or poor open ends or device IP address reuse, which we've obviously learned to flag. But AI-powered fraud flips that model. So really, there are no physical limits anymore. One fraudster can use virtual machines and cloud infrastructure to simulate hundreds of participants, hundreds of devices, all on a single device versus a room full of them. There's also now autonomous decision making. So with AI agents, there is really no need for human direction. These agents can navigate screener logic, they can complete open ends and time the responses all on their own. And even introduce that human-like variability. So generative AI can intentionally introduce spelling errors or casual tone or even emotional language to make their answers sound that much more authentic. And so really what it means is that scale and adaptation. AI systems can respond to your survey logic in real time and adapt to those trap questions and adjust their pace. And I guess really it all sums up, they learn from prior failures. So the real shift, traditional survey farms had ceilings. They were limited by time, hardware, and sometimes even manual effort. AI-powered fraud removes those ceilings. It's elastic, it's self-improving, and really growing indistinguishable from real, genuine human data. So we're not talking about fully autonomous agents managing end-to-end fraud invisibly yet, but AI is already making it much easier to industrialize fraud without the need for really large and coordinated operations. So right now, it's easy to hear about the AI sophisticated fraud in research like deepfakes and voice generation and think, that's just still years away. Or like, surely we'd notice if AI tried to fake that. Or AI responses are still easy to spot. They don't feel human. But hey, let's remember, even just like 18 to 24 months ago, AI models were struggling to generate realistic human hands. And 2 years ago, video deepfakes always had those telltale glitches. And you remember the Will Smith eating spaghetti video you can see on the slide here? I mean, look at the difference in 1 year, essentially. So last year, AI voice clones were also mostly robotic or inconsistent. But hey, you fast forward to today, and now we have AI generated movie trailers and product demos and influencer style videos that are fully synthetic interviews that they're almost impossible to distinguish from real human work. And so this pace of change is accelerating, not slowing down. So really what feels like futuristic today will feel very normal in a year or two, or maybe even faster. And the speed of AI development means that we really need to future-proof our detection strategies now, because by the time these capabilities are common, it will already be too late to start building up your defenses. So there is no silver bullet, but what can we do? Because fraud is very modular, your defenses really must be too. So what defenses can your organization put in place? Well, layered fraud detection. It's one of the best lines of defense because there's no single points of failure. Modern fraudsters easily bypass those individual checks like IP or device ID or speeding, etc. So what you can do is combine things like fingerprinting, behavioral biometrics, tamper detection, and pattern recognition, and ensure that all of these layers work before, during, and even after survey entry. So for example, pre-survey validation, in-survey behavioral monitoring, and then post-survey anomaly clustering. So behavioral biometrics offers some real depth here because AI can fake text, but faking how a person interacts is still much harder today. So what you can track along these lines are things like typing cadence. Humans typically tend to pause or backspace or hesitate, and scroll rhythms too. So AI-generated users often scroll very differently on the page. Obviously, tab switching, so we can flag when when users are more likely to be looking up answers or using AI tools like ChatGPT. And then, of course, there's the old-fashioned copy-paste detection, where you can determine whether open ends are pasted in versus actually typed. So as a pro tip, we would say, look beyond the mouse moved or the time on page, because a lot of these signals that used to be effective are just now really too easy to spoof. Another really important thing to note here is cross-response and cross-project pattern detection. So the why here is that AI fraud often produces very high volume, but with subtle repetition that humans can miss. And so what you can do about this is compare your open-ended phrasing across respondents and projects. And you want to look for repeated sentence structures or too consistent phrasing that doesn't match that natural human variance. The other thing that's really important to be done here is work with very transparent technology partners. So, no platform can catch everything. Nothing's perfect, but you need to know what's covered and what's not. So some things to ask your tech providers are, what types of signals do you monitor across the user journey? How frequently do you update your detection models or rules? How are you addressing emerging threats like AI-generated personas and synthetic identities or agent-based fraud? And then what happens when fraud evolves faster than the detection logic? So how do you, as a technology partner, adapt to that? And why this matters is because blind trust equals blind spots. And so knowing your vendor's limits helps you to build complementary layers, and that transparency enables better collaboration, not just better technology. So one of the other really key tools here is just to stay educated and be collaborative, because again, no single researcher, vendor, or platform can spot every single type of fraud in isolation. So what you can do is attend industry forums and webinars on AI and fraud like this one. You can also share non-PII patterns and red flags with your peers. And this is a really important one. But also, again, just contribute to or advocate for like industry-wide standards on AI fraud detection in research. Also, what knowledge should researchers build? Well, understand first how AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude are being used today in fraud. Number two, learn the basics of how tools work, such as like browser spoofing and device spoofing, proxy networks, and so that you can actually spot some of those signs of their use. Of course, it's always important to stay aware of how fraud is evolving from that pure automation to this more hybrid fraud that we're seeing today. And then that'll help you to recognize that clean looking data is really no longer the proof of quality. So really your best defense is knowledge plus layer detection plus a readiness to evolve.
So, as we wrap up, here are the three things that we hope that you leave with. One is that AI is now a core part of a fraudster's workflow, right? It's scalable, it's ineffective. Traditional detection tools are not enough. We saw the IP checks, device fingerprinting, and trap questions can all be faked and bypassed with these tools and AI. And pre-survey validation or just behavioral analysis should be the standard next stage of fraud detection. Because if you want clean data, you have to stop fraud before they even get to the first survey question. But we also want to ask you all, has anyone experienced examples of fraud not discussed in today's webinar? So there's a lot of examples, use cases out there, but we would love to hear from your own experience. So please type that in the chat. But just generally like that really brings us to the end of this webinar. Thank you so much. And I guess I'll pass it over to you, Ed.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Riley. Thank you, Andrea. We really appreciate that. And I think the number of questions that we've gotten, as well as the number of comments in the chat, is an indication of how engaged everybody was. If we can go to the next slide. It is now time for the Q&A. There are questions, and we're going to start asking them. But if anybody has additional questions you'd like to add, put them in the Q&A now, and we'll get to as many as we can. So I'm going to start to ask you some of the questions, and I'll jump around a little bit, and hopefully we'll get to all of them. And if not, we'll find a way to try to get back to the people who posted them. So one is a really interesting one. It says, won't all these defense checks discourage the real respondents?
I can answer that. I think one of the key things here is that all of these checks should be happening behind the scenes. So this should be essentially invisible. So they're not seeing these checks happening or affecting kind of like their perception of how long it's going to take the study. So things like IP check, geolocation, everything right now happens behind the scenes. Behavioral biometrics, all of that, we also check behind the scenes, whether they're in the pre-screener or in the survey. So again, it should not be impacting the length of interview or just the complexity of your survey from the participant's perspective.
Okay, great. Another question. Have we seen examples of product testing being affected, e.g. iHuts, I'd imagine that it'd be harder to do in scale with the addresses involved. So product testing.
Yeah, that's a good question. And with product testing, we haven't seen too much from what we hear, but the use of AI is just a way to sort of complement the way in which they can describe the way that they rate a product, they review a product, or how they use the product. Again, it's a way for them to kind of like get assisted as to all the details within their answer, whether it's through video camera or an online community. Especially in an online community, they do have the ability to use a prompt and just create like that rich detail response that a lot of qualitative research look for.
Okay, in your browser example, what type of browser do they show up as? Do they appear as headless?
Riley, do you want to answer that? Or you want me to answer that?
No, you got it.
So from what we see from the data that we've collected, that headless browsers are coming from the bots. But for people who are impersonating, who are trying to use these tools for fraud, we actually do see the name of these browsers and we catch them right away. But of course, with how fast technology is moving, new names come up. So it's just keeping kind of like an eye on how these are being used. And if these are really very different from what you expect, like Chrome, Firefox. If you have an international study, what are the common browsers there? What are not the common browsers there? So kind of like spot these signals is also kind of like one of the keys to see what's happening, what's suspicious.
And it might be helpful too to explain kind of what a headless browser is for those of you that might not be familiar. You're familiar with browsers like Chrome and Safari, etc. A headless browser is one that doesn't have any interface. So there's nothing to render. There's no websites. It's literally just a browser that is used oftentimes by people who are creating those scripts. So Andrea mentioned the bots. That's typically what we would see deploying a headless browser. And obviously, you don't want anybody that's coming into your survey on a browser that can't even render the questions or accept an input. So again, these are really almost like simple, common sense ways to kick out certain browsers that we know are going to be fraudulent just for that reason.
All right. So somebody asks, does the industry have a decent benchmark for tracking the prevalence of this kind of fraud? How much worse is the issue now versus, say, 12 months ago, 6 months ago, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we typically see across our subscriber base, on average, about 20 to 30% of all raw survey traffic is definitively fraud. It's again these scripts, these bots, these survey farms that are deploying virtual environments and things like that. They're attacking your survey. And again, that's 20 to 30% just of any raw survey traffic that we typically see out there. There's an additional 5 to 10% of survey traffic that we typically would label as suspicious because there are some red flags, but not enough to definitively label it as fraud. And in those cases, what we typically find are these are not the sophisticated, coordinated survey farms and bot networks. No, these are the professional survey takers who are likely to utilize something like ChatGPT to simulate subject matter expertise. And so that 5 to 10% in suspicious and that 20 to 30% that we typically see as bad. That's been the case for at least for this year, but that can definitely grow with seasonality in just the online research world. So, particularly when you have things like big elections in the United States, typically sometimes you'll see the fraud start to spike, and then when periods of low volume. But for more or less a benchmark for us, it typically centers around that 20 to 30% and that 5 to 10%.
Okay. Have AI or AI agents been used to create innovative counter fraud approaches and flags, looking at this problem in a different way?
Well, like we can't speak for like another provider or like competitor, but we ourselves are actually working on ways in which we can better detect the agents. And I don't want to reveal too much, but I don't know, Riley, if you want to expand on that, but it's something that we continue to be aware of, continue to understand the updates and how fast and how sneaky in a way it's getting through like actual prompting and good prompting. That is why on our end, we don't do kind of like disqualification based on one check. We look for device fingerprinting, like the standard plus behavioral plus use of tools that might raise the red flag. So again, we talked about the multi-layer approach, right? So it's not just detecting an AI agent, but does this look like an AI agent across and does it match an expected human behavior? And kind of like understanding whether we pass or disqualify someone. But Riley, I'm not sure if you want to expand on
Yeah,
that.
I mean, our approach is to, like I was saying earlier, how about, we really would like to see a multi-layered approach and detect. We're focused on that being that front end protection for surveys. So for that reason, we're looking at the behavioral biometrics. We're looking at the activities that people are doing, not necessarily what the context of the open-ended responses are, and then trying to compare those to, well, how would ChatGPT versus Gemini answer the same question, and then try to make some kind of probabilistic determination as to whether that was genuinely drafted by a human or by AI. And the reason for that is, again, because that's very expensive. And there are plenty of technology providers out there that have very sophisticated, really, really interesting technology that helps you to kind of look for anomalies. But I would say that a lot of that should be done post-survey. And then if you think about it, if you have that good front layer of protection, then you're going to get a lot more high confidence in the traffic that gets admitted to your survey. And then that's where those in-survey controls and that post-survey, especially AI analysis, can really start to prove some value.
All right. I don't know if you'll be able to provide some help to the person who asked this question, but maybe you can. Any recommendations for pushing back on a vendor when you suspect fraud in responses, such as repeated phrasing, etc., but they say they've done data checks and don't believe responses are AI generated?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard when you're working with a vendor that might have a conflict of interest. One thing that dtect has really tried hard to do is remain independent. We're 100% focused on fighting survey fraud, and so really what you want is just confidence in your data. And if a vendor is pushing back, then I think it's within your rights to ask for what are the specific reasons why is this data, can you defend the overall quality of the data, and then what are the markers or indicators that you have that we don't.
All right. Here's one that maybe allows you to talk a little bit about what it is exactly that you do, or talk more broadly about the space in which you operate. But the question is, where can someone even access, purchase, or find these suggested new tracking options? We use Qualtrics as a platform, and we have the traditional behavior and answer-based checks, but how does one even begin to integrate checking digital fingerprinting, mouse movement, copy, paste, etc.?
Well, the good news is APIs really open up the door to a lot of this type of stuff. So especially when we were talking earlier about how these controls are not disruptive to the respondent workflow. Instead, a lot of them are very passive controls that are running behind the scenes. And that's again how Detect works. We're an API such that this can be applied to Qualtrics. It can be applied to any survey scripting platform that you're using, or if you have a platform that is, say, brokering sample even, then this can be applied at that point. Really, it's just a matter of getting the technology and getting a technology partner that is keeping pace with the pace of fraud out there, and then making that information, that technology available to you via API, which again integrates seamlessly into your research and the surveys they're in.
Okay. Curious the difference between fully AI fraudulent respondents and real respondents using AI to support their own participation and responses.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was saying earlier about what we see in the split of traffic, that 20 to 30% being driven by these large scale coordinated networks almost of fraud actors. And that's where you're typically going to see the scripts. That's where you're going to see the AI agents that are navigating what used to take a room full of people and devices to get completes done. And then again, that suspicious bucket, that 5 to 10% of traffic that we typically see, that's where you get someone who's not part of these fraud networks, but they're just independent bad actors. These are what we call professional survey takers who know how to get into and find high value incentivized surveys, and then can utilize these tools with the advent of ChatGPT and the ubiquitous nature of that, start to deploy that in these instances. And that's where if you have a technology partner like Detect that's deploying a lot of these really advanced signals where we can pick up on somebody utilizing moving off screen, selecting the question every single time because they need to translate it, that type of thing, we can differentiate oftentimes between the two just from that standpoint.
And to add to what Riley said, right? Like the giveaway really is not how polished the language is
Yeah.
or the text in the survey. It's the behavioral footprint that they leave behind. So real people, as you mentioned, they pause, backspace, they tap switch differently than like fully AI assisted respondents. So we have to focus on those micro patterns, not just the text output only.
Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. What if most of your research and voice of customer is your own customers, where bots and non-real respondents haven't been an issue, sometimes just nonsense, but not much? Should we still concern ourselves with these inward-focused surveys?
I mean, a lot of it comes back to, are you running these incentivized surveys? Is there a reason for someone to try to defraud that? If there's a will, there's a way is usually the best answer there. Such that even I would say like we were talking about earlier with qual, that's something that you would think would be really hard to to fake, but people are still figuring out ways to do it. Again, it could even just be that lone bad actor that's like I said, using ChatGPT. So
Okay, are these bots able to navigate CAPTCHA?
I mean, not usually. Um, Andrea, I don't know if you have a strongly held opinion about CAPTCHA.
It varies. I mean, there are claims that each CAPTCHA captures bot right away, so they don't move forward. I think right now especially in the Google side, they continuously update their technology. It's able to capture new versions of bots and scripts and all of that during that each CAPTCHA verification step. But I think really like the point to kind of like understand is fraudsters, their tech that they use will evolve and they will get passed through CAPTCHAs. But likewise, on our end, we also have to evolve to understand what those are, what those advancements there, and stop them. So I guess kind of like a way to say it's not going to stop them 100%, but there are other ways in which you can check if they've gone through the HCAPTCHA. What are the other things that you can check after they pass that?
All right. Here's a good one for you both. Are you getting approached by panel providers to use the detect tools? If yes, are they using the bare minimum or everything you offer? Just wondering how much fraud is being stopped before it gets to the research companies.
Yeah, a genuine panel provider isn't coming to us asking if we can help them combat fraud, because they oftentimes have their own controls. They've got their own validation methods that they've impaneled people with, built up rich profiles, et cetera. So the thing that we typically get approached with from panel companies specifically is, how can you help me dedupe across panels? Speaking to one yesterday that was complaining that they even see panel duplication across their multiple assets and properties. So meaning that like somebody is a member of this panel and also a member of that panel, and they both get exposure. The same person gets exposure to the same survey, but just through different panel sources. And that obviously causes a lot of problems, leads to reconciliations and reversals. And so from a panelist perspective, they're usually more interested in how we can utilize the detect network to say that, okay, we've seen this person on this device and this IP address coming from this potential panel source. That person has actually been exposed to this survey, and now when they're trying to come through a different panel source, they're prevented from doing so because we can show that duplication. And this is a real problem for panels. Something like at least 2/3 of most large scale survey panels see a lot of duplication. So if you're a really heavy survey taker, it's likely that you're going to find every single survey panel that you can join, and then look for opportunities to take surveys that way.
Okay, very interesting. Is there research on, or what are some of your personal experiences about which methods right now flag suspected fraudulent cases most accurately, most efficiently? And also, are there any behavioral checks that more often tend to erroneously flag real people as fraud or AI?
Andrea, I think you might be a better answer on that one.
So some of the behavior for the behavioral biometrics part, that it's still a little bit tougher today for fraudsters or just the tools to mimic, kind of like the human behavior, is the typing speed or like the typing rhythm that a human generally does. Also key press. Normally, you tend, depending on the sentence or what you're typing, you tend to press on the key. Let's say when you type the, sometimes the T gets pressed a little bit longer than expected. So these types of behavioral signals are the ones that are mostly relied on, like that pattern that people that we expect, versus an AI tool that will be like either really linear, really fast. And that's really like a big flag that we see. And what was the first question, Ed, that you asked, aside from the behavioral one?
Um, I sorry, I clicked on my it was answered and I moved on to be reading the next
Oh, sorry.
question. So sorry
Sorry.
about that.
Sorry if I didn't answer the first one.
That's okay. Um, so someone's asking if someone only had time to implement one fraud prevention measure, which one would you recommend they start with?
I mean, I'm a big advocate of having the best front line of defense that you can have. That first layer of defense should be a robust one. The old adage, junk data in is going to equal junk data out. Well, that's obviously very true in this context as well. And so the other thing is, you think about like the kind of range of anti-fraud controls that you can deploy. A lot of like even simple stuff, like we talked about red herring questions and speed traps, et cetera, that are all like in survey. All of those things are going to be much more effective if you have a really good, solid front layer that basically helps you to have high confidence in the traffic that you admit into your survey in the first place.
All right. We've got about 4 minutes or so to go, and maybe another 10 questions. So let me just try to ask them, and let's give a quick answer, and we'll get through as many as we can, and get everybody on their way on time here. So we've got two questions that are pretty much similar, so I'll just sort of combine them. But it's basically, what motivates the fraudsters to do this job? Somebody says, is it just money? Or is it ruining results of a competitor? Or is it just disrupting the system? Do we know what motivates the fraudsters from doing this?
I don't know, too much time on their
Take a little
hands.
extra time. I think that's an interesting question.
No, but it is an interesting question. I think like I said earlier, if there's a will, there's a way, right? People are going to find some way to generate money, be it through just trying to defraud. I pretend like I'm somebody I'm not, or actually go so far as to code up and script these very sophisticated bots. But I hadn't thought about competitors trying to corrupt data models. That's an interesting one. But to the point, I mean, like there's really a wide range. Another thing to consider too, I guess, is like we talked about earlier with traditional survey farms. Those are very labor intensive, and so oftentimes you would see those in markets coming out of markets where labor's relatively cheap. So again, there's an economic incentive in those markets to defraud. Again, it goes back to can I make money, and how can I make money most efficiently?
Yeah, and to add, the most obvious one is, of course, the money, right? And I think the other one is also the low risk or the low barrier to entry. So there's a lot
Hmm.
of tutorials, videos out there that are being shared within those communities to let them know that the risk is minimal. So it's not like hacking into a bank or worst case scenario, getting reported. It's just very low risk, and especially with the scalability of AI tools,
Yeah.
it's just really easy for them to receive an incentive of whatever, like $1, $5 to $10, depending on what the service asking them for. So I think those are like the biggest motivators, the incentive, the low risk or like the low barrier to entry. And then the other one is the tools, or like we saw, like, right, like the ease of tools or AI tools that they can use to make that, to get more out of it.
Yeah.
All right. Can you speak? You just sort of touched on this a bit, but we got about a minute and a half left. Can you speak about the geography of AI fraud, where it emanates, and to what extent it's prevalent outside English language surveys?
Well, it's everywhere. Um, recent news this year has shown that survey fraud, coordinated survey fraud, is not something that's outside the United States in these kind of far-flung markets. It can actually happen here, and in some cases to a very large degree. So I think it's not so much where it's geographically concentrated. It's just a matter of, this is the internet. The internet doesn't have borders. And so therefore, if you don't have good detection methods, especially on that front layer, then you are opening yourself up to any and all sorts of fraud that comes from all over the place.
All right. If we're coming up to the top of the hour, if we can just go to the next slide, please. I do, just before we end, I just want to tell everybody who's still on with us that the next MRII and University of Georgia webinar will be taking place next month, September 16th, once again at noon Eastern Time. The topic is Beyond Scale: Authentic Human Understanding with AI. The speaker will be Neil Skillerwart, who's the head of research and methodologies from Conveo. So with that, next slide, let's just wrap up by thanking our two speakers, Riley and Andrea. We really appreciate the perspective and all the thoughtfulness that went into today's presentation. Thanks to everybody who tuned in as well, and thanks for asking all of your wonderful questions that I think allowed us to flesh out this topic even more. And we will get you all a copy of the presentation recording that'll be coming next week. Some of you who tuned in late, look for an email from Pam Bracken at the University of Georgia. And with that, let's wrap up, and we'll see you all at future webinars. So thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.